me to introduce myself first, or you'll know who I am? My name is Pádraig Gallagher. I'm founder, owner of Gallagher's Boxty House here in 20 Temple Bar. I grew up in County Leitrim, a small market town, busy little market town, and was raised on Boxty, hence Boxty House, Sláinte. I developed the whole Boxty concept, washing pots in the kitchen in Caracas, as one did in the 70s, and especially when you came from Leitrim, you travelled. You knew where the bus was out, so you had to go, and that was just the way it was. There was no work. It was terrible recession. But I travelled a lot. Ended up working on in the Caribbean, on the yachts, and off season I was living in Caracas, and these guys I was working for were making flatbreads, and they were filling them with koftas and rolling them. And I grew up in Boxty, and Boxty is a potato flatbread. Well, there's three types of Boxty, but the one we ate most was the pan Boxty. And I said, well, so maybe someday I could do something with that. Bounced the idea off my brother Ronan at the time about this dream I had to open a traditional Irish restaurant with themed around Boxty. 9 months later, we got it open. It was from the childhood. It was also discovering other foods out in the Caribbean, in South America especially, and then even North America and sort of Mexico, and just realizing that we have a food culture in Ireland, and we have a very strong food culture in Ireland, and that was important to me, because the funny thing about opening the restaurant I'm talking back in 1988. I said to people, I'm opening a restaurant. They said, oh great, that's really exciting. And I said, what kind of restaurant are you going to open? I said, I'm going to open an Irish restaurant. And they go, oh, what are you going to sell? And I kind of got into the story about Boxty and how I was going to wrap the Boxty around different fillings and create this unique Irish menu. And it was kind of, best of luck to you with that one, mate. Yeah. When we started out first, I had to make the Boxty a lot thinner. So that was the challenge to me, and it took me I spent about 6 months up with my parents in Leitrim, just going through different recipes and experimenting with the different ones and trying to make it a little bit lighter, because traditionally we ate it on its own, and it was a heavy product. And Friday nights in Mohill, where I grew up, you had a choice between fish or Boxty, and the fish I wasn't very fond of at the time. There was a lot of smoked old cod or whatever, and God knows what was in it. But being inland and stuff like that, it was religious. It was stuck to that stuff, and I had the Boxty. It's quite a skill in making Boxty, and that was one of the reasons I remember when I came back. When I was a kid growing up, people used to sell it on the side of the road. You'd be crossing over the border to Enniskillen. We'd go up shopping to Enniskillen, and you cross the border there. The people in the petrol stations here would have boiled Boxty dumplings for sale, or Boxty pancakes and stuff like that. It was dying out though, and I really noticed that, and the difference from the years I was away. When I came back, and I said, "Oh God, it's very hard to get Boxty. No one's making it anymore because it's a labour-intensive product to make." 1988, you wouldn't come down to Temple Bar. It was a very, very different. It was destined to be a bus depot. So CIE had bought up a lot of the old Georgian properties in the area, and they were set to demolish that and turn it into this area, whole area, into a central bus depot. I got in here because the rents were cheap at the time. We bought the number 20 in Temple Bar, which was a locksmiths at the time. The restaurant next door, Elephant and Castle, was a drug wholesalers. I can't remember. Next door was this one here was a dry cleaners. So it was a very different area. The Owl Dub across the road was a place full of characters. You had Peter the Thief in the Owl Dub. Peter the Thief would go up to Brown Thomas's and steal to order. This is the kind of people that were down here, My mum was actually warning me about it. She says, "Be careful up there, I heard it's full of drugs." It was just good crack. It was good fun, There are lots of them, and you know what? From the ash clouds to foot and mouth, to the recession, to the Celtic Tiger years. Celtic Tiger years were really good for me because I went back and did a degree in culinary arts, so it kept me out of trouble. I was looking around and seeing all these guys opening up restaurants, driving Porsches and stuff, and saying, and I'm looking at the rents they're paying, and I'm saying, it's not going to work. That can't work. The math doesn't work on that. And sure enough, it didn't.
How has the Irish food and business in general kind of changed over those past 40 years? I know you've kind of spoken about it a little bit, but from those early days in the late 80s to now, regarding business and food, where have you seen it change as such?
Pride. I'm not talking about the festival, I'm talking about pride in our food, pride in our culture, and understanding the history of our culture. Because I think it's taken us, we've come through a dramatic period post-famine. Like my father spoke to people that survived the famine, and that's a whole era. So that, and you know, I grew up with there was no bon appetit, it was get it into you. You know, you weren't allowed to leave anything on the plate. We weren't allowed. Food was sustenance. It wasn't enjoyment. It was, you know, you had to be sustainable. And again, I go back to Florence Irwin even, you know, and Irish country recipes from 1937, and how the recipes she collected from over 100 years ago. She collected them from 1905 to 1913. The seaweed, there's 1/3. Look, I think 15% of the book is fish, different pollen and fish unique to Ireland. Gilpin, pollock. There's some certain fishes that were caught in Lough Neagh that they don't grow they don't breed anywhere else. But the seaweeds, the sowens, the oats, potatoes in the book are actually about 48% of the recipes contain potato. But a lot of that potato is just to stretch a recipe or to extend the recipe. It's not like this whole thing about Ireland. We're a nation of potato eaters. We're not, and we have huge culture in food and diverse culture in food. You know, and it's there. It's not been exploited. It's not been spoken about because it's not been researched. I'm very lucky with my staff, and my staff are very lucky with me, I guess. It's a two-way contract. We have a lot of staff here 2-3 decades. And one of the things I'm pretty strong about is that people work with us, not for us. And it's a two-way contract, and it's really, really important to me for that. And that's why people are with us so long. Like COVID happened, we kept on 10 staff, you know, during COVID, and try to keep the place alive and keep it functioning. Because again, you have people that are there at that time they were with us probably 18 years, whatever. You can't just let people like that go. If you had invested a whack of money into a piece of machinery, you weren't going to throw it out. I'm not saying a person is, but you've invested time, energy, and love into people that work with you. Why would you let that go? So we struggled through that. And I know we want to talk a little bit about COVID and how tough that was, but you know what? We kept it going, and I was able to reopen when we were let reopen again with good skilled staff. 100 years time, God, I could see a few on Mars. Yeah, for sure. Roll on, Elon. No, the world's the oyster, you know, food is food. I'm very proud of what we do. I'm very proud of it's not just about food, it's about culture, and it's about, you know, you come to Ireland, you what is Irish food? You know, the people always ask that. I've kind of, it's not just about Boxty, although Boxty is our mainstay. There's bacon, fish, we have great meat, we have great pork. It's just, there's an array of food here, and you know, we've great pride in our hospitality, our culture, our music. It all just wraps into Gallagher's Boxty House, you know. People come in here and they ask us for Guinness. I was selling them Murphy's and explaining them, you know, Murphy's is a good stout, different stout, there's different stouts in Ireland. But here. I say, well, we actually brew this ourselves, make it from scratch. It's back to the whole craft brewing back in the 2000, the late 2003, 4, 5, into the early teens. I actually wanted to invest in a winery, and I had been actively looking at that. And then a friend of mine had opened up his independent brewery, and I said, okay, let's put these. We put his beers on tap in here because we have never sold Guinness in the restaurant here. It's a long story; it's another day. But we were the biggest seller of Murphy's outside of Cork for at least 27, 28 years until we started brewing our own beers, and Murphy's and Beamish. We started brewing our own beers because I trialed his craft beers. I like the whole idea of something, again, it's Irish. And everything in the restaurant, from our whiskies to our gins to our vodkas, there's an Irish ethos behind 95% of what we do in here. Local, the malt is 90% of it is Irish. The specialty malts are imported. But again, it's trying to do something for our country, for local, and tell a story.
How's it going? I am Jack Gallagher.
Who's Jack?
And I am CEO of Gallagher's Boxty. I'd be in with the family, obviously my dad and things like that. And we used to have this big, kind of booth up in section 1 upstairs. And I used to bring in all my toys and things like that. And it was very difficult to feed, but I'll get to that in a little while. And as part of our service, we didn't have a lot of operating space, but we had like all these water jugs up along kind of where the booth was. And I was there playing around with my toys and stuff, and I managed to knock them all over. So I made a great entrance into Gallagher's Boxty. I'm sure the staff loved me, that night. I've always seen great opportunity with what we do here, as I like to say, there's lots of Irish pubs, but there's very few Irish restaurants. And I think as a young man, I always saw like something great in that. And I always thought the Boxty concept was so amazing. And then particularly growing up through burritos and the burrito craze in Dublin, I was like, what the hell, people need to start eating Boxty, like, you know what I mean? So I did always see myself having a place here. Now, with that being in mind, I did do a completely different life path before. I studied computer science and business in college. I think when COVID finally came around and, we were more or less on our knees, it was really like that kind of breaking point between, which way are you going to go here? And I just jumped right into the business, and here we are. I worked here since I was 14, 15, you know what I mean? So it's always been part of me. And I've so much to give to that, and I've always held a special place for the restaurant itself, just for how it's developed me as a person. I recommend it to anybody, if you're a little bit nerdy into computers and things like that, to really get out of your shell. I was just bussing tables, cleaning cutlery, glasses, whatever else have you, and then I wasn't particularly fond of it because as a young man I had very different dreams in mind, I wanted to be playing football and skateboarding and whatever else have you, More Americans know what Boxty is than Irish, and it's honestly a shame. We're an Irish family run business. I know it's in the heart of Temple Bar. We've been here for God knows how long, 40 years now at this stage, and still to this day, I'm telling people, where do you work? Oh, Gallagher's Boxty, where's that? It's like, oh, Elephant and Castle. It's like, yeah, the one beside there. So it's just one of those kind of learning pieces and educational pieces that Ireland will eventually go through, and that will include South Dublin as well. At the start, it was really interesting seeing, I suppose, my dad operating the business and certain things he had to go through. I'm sure as any restaurateur can, talk about. I'm sure they have millions of stories, but seeing it firsthand as well was very interesting. And just the moving parts of it all, and late nights and whatever, working here, being home late, and then working with them. I think, although I've always said this, we do have a really good relationship, even working together, and that's mostly because like poor Gog's very fair, whereas I call him Pogue, but yeah. Yeah. It was very fair. Just because I was in the restaurant and he was downstairs or something, I didn't want to be screaming dad, and then I don't want to be saying Pádraig because that's way too long. So it's just like Pogue, and then now it's Pogie Bear and all sorts of variations over that. It is always going to be the Boxty. Like as we like to say, think of your Boxty as like your Italian pasta. Do you know what I mean? Like it's there, will always be present in the dish, and it's there to like, I suppose add to the dish if anything, but we'll take from all sorts of cuisines, like, and we're even doing like Asian Boxty types, like pork belly Boxty with like a Korean gochujang sauce, like, and no, we go crazy with it, like, but respecting tradition of the Boxty recipe, and incorporating either, that the meat is Irish, or part of the ingredients are Irish, and yeah, that's kind of how we do it, Thankfully, the staff, particularly the long-term staff, they're very, they have a lot of experience as well, and I've learned a lot from them, from like not only my Dave Power, COO, and Pádraig or Pogue, and but like the other staff as well. Like I learned so much of my waiting experience and bartending experience from guys we've had here for years. So, seeing that progression. It's more so when we get somebody new in today, and I do take pride in that a lot, that we'll take somebody in who has no experience whatsoever, and over the course of 3 to 4 months, they might leave, they might go and do something else in their life, but we provide hospitality, and we've always done that, and they will apply that to every other aspect of their life, whether that's in whatever field they decide to go in, but we are I'd like to think as like a training ground for a lot of people, a lot of new entryways. Gallagher's Boxes to me is on the offhand sounding really cringe, but it is the future, and it's going to be the future of how people view Irish hospitality, and that's going to shift from obviously Irish fare, pub fare, which we're very well known for, but the food is going to come into its own element. It's going to be the convergence of those two elements that will be the future. What does it mean to me to be carrying that legacy forward? Like, because it's a family thing, there's so much of a family element in the restaurant itself, but for the food, I think it's actually particularly interesting. We kind of talk about the lack of education for Irish food, so it's nice to champion that, and I do hope that whatever I do in the future and bringing it forward, I'm so blessed to have, like, honestly, like Pogue and whoever else around me that I've gotten this far, so I can only hope that people get behind it and they can see, the vision for what we're trying to do here, So yeah, that would probably be it. Probably like, like the responsibility of it's a little bit, I don't know, scary, but yeah. I'm excited.
Surviving those years and coming through those ups and downs and those troughs and peaks, which is normal in every business, I'm very, very proud of it. I'm really proud that it's the succession there is going on. There's expansion, which is happening now, and my son's got the energy and the youth to do that, and I'm very, very excited about the future of Gallagher's Boxty House internationally. Here in Dublin, it's great. It's for me. People are coming to Dublin. They're going to go to the Guinness Storehouse. I want them to. They'll go down to the Temple Bar pub, and I want them to walk out of here with a T-shirt too.